Hello there. Once again, this is Anton from Anton Bay. Thank you for stopping by the collection room. Today, I'm looking at some comics I just got in the mail this week. If you're a longtime fan of the channel, you know that I've had these comics before, and this is kind of me reacquiring them. So, about a year or so ago, actually it's more like 2 years now, I guess. Yeah, over 2 years. I went through a divorce and had to sell a whole bunch of comics. Kind of to get by, kind of to pay off debt, kind of to get through everything. A lot. I went from about 150 long boxes to about 8. And these are ones that I sold, and these are ones that I had the opportunity to get back very inexpensively. And so I did. I was like, you know what? There was a lot of stuff in that collection that could have been gleaned and cleaned out, but this was one that I was like, I shouldn't have got rid of those. I've always been a big fan of Cloak and Dagger. And so this is Strange Tales 1 through 4. I'm excited to have these back. This is my favorite era of Marvel. This is that, basically any time in the 80s. Marvel was cranking out a lot of books. The art was all really consistent. This is, I can't read it, 87? I think it's 87. 75-cent covers. Strange Tales featuring Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange. Interesting combination, interesting book. They weren't really doing Strange Tale type featurette books at this point, but they did with these characters, and enough blagging on there. We're gonna crack this thing open. If you're not familiar with Cloak and Dagger, they're two of my favorite kind of obscure characters. They were much more obscure. I think they finally got like a TV or show or something that I'll never watch, but either way, they were two runaways, and they got experimented on, and they got the powers of light and darkness, and they're just, I don't know, their stories are pretty down to earth. They have powers, yes, but their powers aren't like incredibly amazing, and they're almost as much trouble as they are good. I mean, they're not like alpha class powers or anything. Cloak's powers will basically consume him if he doesn't have light, and her powers will burn her up if she doesn't expel the light. So they find themselves stuck together. I think later series is really kind of pulled away from that thing, but I thought that was terrible. Like, you should totally keep it that way. They need each other to survive, and whether they like it or not, they're stuck together, and that's cool because she's like a rich girl ballerina. He's like this poor inner city black kid. And they just had this really interesting dynamic. It was just a good dynamic. I thought it was cool. All the stories, of course, and they're one of the more like lurking teams. A lot of superheroes run during the day. Cloak and Dagger, they're definitely a night duo. It's always a dark scene, and so if you like kind of dark, gloomy city Marvel in the 80s, this was your book, and I did, and I absolutely loved it. I'm noticing like a serious lack of big splash pages. I can forgive that just for the time period, and because it's one of my favorite, two of my favorite characters of the day. It was just a really good read. One of my more favorites, and I remember I had, this is one of the few superheroes where I had like big posters of them on the wall. I had this really cool Cloak and Dagger poster that I had up in my bedroom. I thought that was the coolest. Always dealing with creepy drug dealers and gurus and street murderers and gangs, and they were just kids. And I was originally introduced to them, I think in, you know what? The first time I really remember them being like a big scene. I'm trying to think when. I know I saw them in like the old like 90s Maximum Carnage video game. And I know in the Maximum Carnage storyline they popped up, and I'm pretty sure I ran into them there, but I might have seen them before that in some old Spider-Man stuff. This is one of the few. So like when I sold all my books, I sold a bunch of keys. There's a couple of keys I kept. I mean, I sold some really good keys. I sold the first appearance of Gambit, first appearance of Rogue, first appearance of a lot of my favorite X-Men, first appearance Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, first appearance She-Hulk. Actually, I sold a lot of key issues. However, I did keep my my Spider-Man issue that had the first appearance of Cloak and Dagger in it. That is still in my collection. I also, for some reason, have a first appearance of Power Girl, which that's fine. I guess it's as close to the first appearance of Supergirl that I could get. You know, being a clone of her, alternate reality of her. Anyway, I digress. I live in the past there. These are in pretty good shape. I ended up getting the whole series of Strange Tales, 1 through 19. This only ran 19 issues. And the first longer series of Cloak and Dagger. There was a 4-part miniseries, and then there was a 11-part series, an 11-issue series. Then there was this, and then there was the Mutant Misadventures of Cloak and Dagger, which I have never had a full run of. For some reason, it's a little bit newer book, a little more modern, and separated a little bit from what I always kind of considered Cloak and Dagger to be about. The pages would come apart, which is, you know, shadows, creepy rooftops. They live in a church. I love that they live in this church. There's a padre that kind of halfway takes care of them, but also kind of, I think, is in love with Tandy, which is Dagger, and thinks Cloak is a demon. I didn't look. I always thought it was really cool in all the original issues of Cloak and Dagger. They kind of have this, it's not an exact quote of Psalms, but they do have kind of a Stan Lee-ish Marvelized version of one of the Psalms in here when it says, "I am both fearfully and wonderfully made. The darkness and the light are both alike. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Okay, that's not the exact quote from Psalms. It's actually, "I am knitted together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." But and it doesn't say anything about the darkness and light being both alike. But either way, there is the splash page that I've been looking for. A big, beautiful thing here. Of course, it's Stan Lee Presents, and like this covers it. Like, it's creepy. I'm gonna fold this back because I know that's like a sin. Okay, I won't. But that's like that covers it. It's got that creepy, like, Daredevil, rainy night, stormy, ghetto church type feel to it, and it's wonderful. And then you juxtapose that with like Dagger prancing around, flashing lights and all sorts of things, and they had a pretty interesting, I wouldn't call them necessarily a rogues gallery, but like friends that helped them, mayhem and stuff like that. They were kind of villains, but kind of helpful at the same time. It just occurs to me, I also used to have their Marvel Legends, which I don't have anymore. I sold them. But I was never that impressed with their Marvel Legends, honestly. And there is Cloak when he is not in his dark cloak demon shape. He is literally a cavern of a person. He's an abyss of a human. Nightmare was one of their rogues gallery people. They were always on the docks for some reason. I remember this because that's where all the drugs came in. They were always busting up stuff on the docks, and the way it always played out, you really felt like they were in just one single neighborhood, because there was always like, well, there's the shipyard, there's the church, and it felt like there was always like just a limit. Their world seemed to be quite small. They did not go on any vast, amazing adventures across the globe in these original stories. And I think that's what I loved about them so much, is they seemed isolated, like they occupied their own space in the Marvel Universe. One that they didn't necessarily share with anybody else, but they would occasionally show up in other people's books. But when it came to their own books, they stayed close to home, and it was pretty cool. I was always just a really big fan. Anyway, this is just the first 4 issues. I have all 19. I'll probably go through them at some point. I just want to give you guys a taste of what it was. Strange Tales, featuring Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much for watching. That's my video. That's my story. Appreciate it. Catch you guys later. Bye.